Good morning, everyone. Yes, indeed, a long title, but in this presentation there would be very few words, and I promise very few words about ASOX as a company, but just for the ones who have missed or have not read the memos, ASOX is developing software for 5G. So I'm here this morning to talk to you about the three major trends that have been hammered into your minds for the last day or maybe for the last year. One of them is 5G, and it was said previously that what makes 5G unique is that it's really the first time that the telco technology or RAN technology is pure software. The second element that makes 5G very different from the previous generations is that it's highly configurable. Just to set some numbers in your mind, there is something like a Google. That means a very large number of parameters that can be optimized. When we optimized our 5G solution, we had to handle something like 500,000 different parameters in the solution. While let's say in LTE it was 10,000 and in 2G it was about 20. So it's a very, very different order of complexity solution. Second one is cloud, and we've been talking about cloud in this journey, but sorry, for me cloud is still Azure, it's still Google, it's still Amazon, it's still the internet. And Industry 4.0, which we will talk about, of course, today, but really what, again, is fundamental in Industry 4.0 is that it's the age of information. So if you really look at these three major trends, these are software trends. Telco is an interesting element in this trend, but even at its scale, it's not big enough to change any one of these. So I think one of the first things that telco people like us need to have is a little bit of humility. We do not affect significantly these trends, not even the 5G one. That means our claim is that 5G is not really a telco technology. It's an IT technology. So historically, factories, and we're giving a lot this example of Germany because Germany is one of our major hubs, have always shied away from the traditional carrier business, and they had some interaction with operators in the sense of perhaps having a few CPEs or a few devices that they would configure through some IoT portal for a carrier. It really started to get interesting once factories started to use, again, very carefully, some elements that came from the public cloud. The next phase, which kind of creeped in through the NFV world, and in many respects, I'm not even sure that that was the NFV intention, was that telco functions, and we all know that now packet cores, pretty much all of the world's packet cores are available in the public cloud, sucked in a lot of these telco functions. And then it was very natural that once edge clouds came in, whether they're the Azure Stack Edge or the Outpost or any other of these managed servers on-prem emerged, it would be very logical to move some of these telco, shall I say, communication features back into the factory, but this time under a managed cloud. And I'm specifically want to emphasize that because, yes, there are still servers sitting in that factory, but they're not owned by the factory. They're owned by Azure or by Google. And it's a completely different mindset that has been generated literally under the radar in the last year or two. So in the modern factory, and this is one of the nice things about factories, while we've been hearing about autonomous cars driving the streets of San Francisco, and keep on seeing why is that delayed, factories are moving in an astonishing rate to adopt new technologies such as AGVs and AI and digital twins at the rate that surprised us and all of our partners. But really, again, this is not really a revolution that has to do with telco technology. It's really about the difference that an enterprise, or in this case a factory, has in the way he procures, manages, and leverages cellular technology. First of all, about procuring. In an edge model, my upfront expense diminishes dramatically. I could give you some numbers, but it's really up to a point where today, if you go with an incumbent, you might pay €1 million to set up a 5G private network. In the cloud model, it's probably €10,000. That's a pretty significant gap. And then it turns into a monthly payment. You don't want it, you churn. But really, most customers will not churn if the service is good. They will pay as they grow. And then they can really see the ROI, the connection between the application and the physical infrastructure. And again, I can't stress it less. It's not about technology or relationships. It's simply about the business model and the way that I, as a factory owner, can interact with technology. The second thing is management. In the new cloud model, managing the 5G resources is just yet another part of my daily routine. My IT manager walks into the morning, he sees what's the capacity on his disk drives, what happens through his network, what's the status of his 5G network. It's just as simple as that. And then it's driven by the application. So really the local IT manager doesn't really know what a CU or a DU is, or what even a cell is, but he could know that he's running out of capacity for some of his robots or for some of his video images. And then leveraging. And I think the leveraging is the key point, and if I dare say, is where the traditional telco model completely breaks up to a point where it becomes obsolete. It's the leveraging. If I'm a factory in Germany and I came up or was convinced to accept a new type of safety feature where an AI engine would monitor the behavior of my employees and alert before their hand, comes into harm way from some machine, and I'm using compute, yes, I could go the old way. I could hire a consultant. I could talk with an integrator. I could build up the system. I could trial it. And sure enough, within 2 years and spending a lot of money, I would reach some solution, hopefully successful. But what if a factory in Taiwan had the same idea 2 years ago, and they already developed this technology with an integrator, perhaps? They already created a subset of applications to create this same use case, tuned their 5G RAN, tuned the core, and built a perfect solution. Why shouldn't they be able to upload it into the cloud with a partner or with the app provider and have the same German factory benefit from it? Sounds simple, right? We do it every day for any other application, but when it comes to cellular infrastructure, we're all shaking. Oh no, this has to be managed by this guy and that guy, and it's very, very unique. Well, surprise, most of the world's problems are never unique to ourselves. So if we can leverage the power of the cloud, then it's quite dramatic. And these, by the way, are not just random examples. These are actual things that happened within this year. And what it will create is an incredible velocity of innovation. So let's talk a little bit about use cases. And guess what again? UR LLC and EMMB and MMTC are not use cases. They're technical words described by engineers in 3GPP. I'm saying that because sometimes we have early customers who said, yes, we were told that our use case is EMMB. And I'm telling them, no. Your use case could, for example, be driven by a lot of data created through cameras. So your use case is heavily intensive around imaging. And imaging has very specific attributes. It's driven by the delta of events. AI can really play a role in alerting and changing behaviors. And it's relatively small investment. I just need to hook up a couple of cameras, connect them to, a fairly limit 5G private network, and get going. But it's highly effective in security and safety and meeting regulatory terms. So why should I go for a network that costs me €1 million and does 150 other features? Give me what I need. A second use case, which I love, and I think we all like, are these moving robots in logistics and factories. There, it's driven by mobility, right? I have a bunch of these autonomous vehicles driving around. I do care about latency. I do care about things like handoffs. Yes, all technical terms. But at the end of the day, for the enterprise, it's about the smooth sailing of his devices across the production floor, the logistical center. A different use case, a completely different network needs to be established. And the third use case is the traditional one that we're accustomed in factories, and that's all the sensors, all our SCADA monitoring and temperature and sensors of all that. But a word of caution, the chances that 5G anytime soon will go into SCADA networks are quite small. We talked about the device issues and the pricing issues, but the truth of the matter is that there's an old saying, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. So don't expect SCADA technologies to move into 5G anytime soon. In greenfields, yes, because of why not, right? There's these new routers, but again, a different use case. These are the fundamental use cases that we're seeing in networks. And sometimes a factory will not know in advance which one he needs. So there's no sense to overbuild or overdesign. Just place a cloud infrastructure and pay as you grow or change as you grow per application. So how do things look like? Another kind of insight is when people think about industry, they think about Lufthansa or Boeing, massive factories. But guess what? 90% of all production floors in Germany, and we have what, about 70,000 of those in Germany, are smaller actually than 30,000 square feet, 3,000 square meters. That's all it is. These are relatively small venues, so the cost of radios is truly insignificant up to a point where it's a don't care item. All the value can be moved to software. Second thing, data consumption that we're seeing, 2 or 3 gigabytes of upload data. That's a lot of capacity. Most of our customers are still consuming their first gigabyte. So it's really, really early on in the consumption of traffic. And third is the number of sensors. Sometimes we get RFPs. I need 100,000 devices. No, you don't. Right now in a factory, you're probably using 30, 40, 50 of these AGVs and cameras. And if you see, there will be those thousands of sensors, but as I told you, that's years away, that's miles away before it's going to come. So really, what's driving 5G private networks at the production floor now is heavily intensive video or mobility. So what are the governing dynamics of our business? First and foremost, spectrum. Yesterday on a panel, some guys said that 5G private spectrum is just get going. Well, that's not true. Actually, all the industrial countries in the world have already allocated private spectrum. The last one to join was South Korea, and 3 weeks ago they joined with the 4.8 gigahertz. So right now, all the industrial of Asia, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, China, if I forgot somebody, please forgive me, have private spectrum. And in Europe, Germany, the UK, creeping up north and going down south. Yes, we still got some quirks with the French, but there are the French. We love them, but they always are a little bit unique, and they'll get it sorted short enough on the 2.6 gigahertz. So first of all, spectrum from an issue for private use is a done problem. The second thing is that this is a service industry. Therefore, it's about integrators who provide managed services, the Infosys, the Accentures of the world, who are going to be the key drivers of these kinds of technologies, and of course, smaller and more highly dedicated integrators. And it's the age of applications. And last but not least on industry is that there's not just one industry. Even within the industrial use case, a production floor, a classical chemical factory, or a logistical center are quite different in their use case. But as you see, we can pretty much bucketize them into 3 or 4 major domains. So how can operators still play a role? I was a little bit cheeky yesterday, and I asked in a panel the operators, what did they think the ratio in the business would be? And one that was, I believe, more honest, he said about 50%, which is to be fair. But actually, all the statistics that we're getting imply that service providers would have about 20% of this business moving forward. But 20% is still nice. But even to get that 20%, what they really need to do is partner up with edge providers, which they're doing in their own subtle way. And this is the key. Simplify the engagement model. We heard one operator yesterday, he was asked, what's the commercialization model for his 5G private network? He says, I don't know, I'm still in POC stage. Well, that's not a good answer. If you're developing a business, you've got to figure out what's the engagement model for day one. And as I said, there's no way that the engagement model on the enterprise market for 5G will be different than other SaaS software. That's the way businesses consume and operate today. The third thing is to embrace open standards. There's some progress there. We got to be fair. Sometimes comments by big vendors saying that Open RAN will be applicable in 6G. Okay, that's not really, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But in general, the industry is moving to open standards, which, to be fair, have opened up the door for all this new cloud and enterprise software to come into the world. And open up the supply. This is truly intriguing for me because sometimes I see these press releases saying a major carrier opened up his supply. He added another vendor to his list. It reminds me of the Blues Brother movie when they walk into this pub and they ask, what kind of music is played here? And they say, we play both musics, country and Western. Well, that's not diversity of suppliers, right? So when we talk about diversity of suppliers, we pretty much say everybody who is, who can join in the party should join in the party. That's basically it. I promised you not to over-solicit ASOCs. I hope I managed to give you some insight about this new trend. Do we have time for a question or we're done?
We can take one or two.
1 or 2 questions, guys. Feel free.
Do we have questions from the audience? As I said before, we wanted to have engagement. Otherwise, I need to make you some exercises to wake you up. Do we get some questions? Maybe one. You said 70,000 kind of factories, Germany. So to what extent do we see these possibilities which technologies undoubtedly bring to Industry 4.0? What is it really live already today? So are we at 5% of the factories of the 70,000, at 1% or 20%? Where do we stand?
Okay, other Chatham rules, I would tell you that really 5G private networks last year, if I had to pick a number, I would say that there were probably 200 networks worldwide. So this market is truly in the infancy. But the interesting thing is that the scale of cloud, and if you think this way, not 1 million a site, 10,000 a site, simple applications, this could jump from 0 to 50,000 networks in the next 12 months. And we're there to capture 30 or 40% of that.
So you're in a good market position. Congratulations. Big round of applause. I think that was great.
Thank you.